Hey guys, welcome back to another edition of Intuitive Angling. Much appreciated you taking a little time to watch the video. And today we're going to have a discussion on when you want to use a heavy jig versus a light jig. And there's a lot of in-between sizes, but I specifically want to talk about the two spectrums of heavy and light and when are the best times to use them. I think it's going to surprise you to know all the different variables with that. And also just wanted to remind everybody, I'm going to be talking about the Block It Old School jig here. If you guys are interested in any of ordering some of the old school jigs, I'll include the link in the description here. You can get them through Baitworks online or in the physical store in Springfield, Missouri. But got them all ready to go, and you can order them through there. Okay, guys, let's talk a little bit about the differences here, or when you want to use what. One of the things about jig sizes, it's a pretty predictable formula, I guess, you come up with when you're talking about choosing the right sizes for different conditions. A lot of things in bass fishing are abstract. Say, for example, color, for example. A lot of times there are so many different color applications out there that you don't really know what the bass want or prefer unless you just experiment and figure out what that is. A lot of times there's no rhyme or reason. It just is what it is. But on jig sizes, it's a little bit different, because one of the things I found is when you have a certain set of conditions that you want to use to select your jig sizes, it's usually pretty accurate when it works better or not. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about the heavier size. This is the 5/8 ounce Block It Old School. This is probably my favorite size to fish right here. I probably caught more good ones on the bigger size than anything. I think it's a little bit more versatile, but the time that I want a bigger jig, a bigger, heavier size head like this, is a couple of different things. First of all, it has to do with water clarity. One of the most true foundations that you'll find for jig sizes is the clearer the water, the heavier the head you want to use, because most of the time in that clear water like that, you're wanting that jig to get to the bottom as quick as you can, because you're usually fishing a little bit deeper water. Most of the time, if I'm fishing a 5/8 ounce jig in clear water, I'm usually like flipping or pitching clear bushes, maybe around some clear docks. I may be pitching it to like a bluff wall, something like that. And I'm not concerned about those fish hitting it on the way down. I'm wanting to get this bait down on the bottom quick. And also in clear water like that, when you have a jig that falls a little bit faster, sometimes that creates a reaction strike where they can't get quite as good a look at it. So that's the first situation that I use a heavy jig in, is clear water. The second situation has to do a lot of it with the density of cover you're fishing. One of the big keys when you're pitching and flipping around cover is you want to be efficient with it. You want to be able to make as many efficient pitches and flips as you can, yet there's also a factor determining the rate of fall, that sometimes the fish want a slower rate of fall depending. But most of the time I'll use a heavier jig if I'm having to penetrate cover where my line is laying over something. Say, for example, if I'm pitching over laydowns or in bushes or something like that where my line is actually laying across a piece of wood, I want a little bit heavier jig to get down through that cover to penetrate it quick. Or grass, something like that would be the same thing. And the third time that I want a heavier jig is when the water is extremely hot. If you're fishing in the middle of summer, flipping and pitching shallow cover, laydowns, stumps, docks, whatever like that, if that water temperature is over 80, 85 degrees, you'll get a lot more bites on a fast fall with a big heavy jig like that. Now, one of the things you don't want to do on a heavy jig is don't get locked into it, because a heavier jig, it's faster to fish, it's quicker to fish, it's more efficient. I think a lot of people get locked into fishing a heavy jig a little too much in a lot of different situations, but that's the time that it works best. Now, when you're using a lighter jig, like the 1/4 or the 3/8 ounce old school jig, this is when it's sort of the direct opposite like that. I like a lighter jig in dirtier water. The muddier the water that I'm fishing, the lighter the jig I like. I like that lighter fall, that slower fall in that dirtier water, because it gives those fish more time to get to it because they can't visually see it. Also, this is especially important if the water is pretty cool. If you're talking about water temperatures that are below 60 degrees and it's muddy, I always use a light jig. That's one of the big things. Second time that I like a light jig is if I have a lot of really shallow cover. Like, say, for example, I'm fishing the back end of the creek and a lot of the stumps are in 2 foot of water or less. Or I'm fishing shallow grass, like shallow milfoil in 2 foot of water. Or I'm pitching around dock pilings around the walkways where it's real shallow. If you're in really shallow water that's stained, you're going to get a lot more bites by going with a lighter jig because it's more subtle. It doesn't make that plop in the water, gives that fish time to zero in on it. A lot more with that. And the third time that I like a light jig is in and around the spawn. When that water temperature starts to get 60 degrees, for example, like in April, the fish, when they, not necessarily when they're on the beds, but when they get close to bed, like when they're when they're up looking for places to bed and right after they get done bedding, right around bedding, you're going to get a lot more bites on a slow falling jig. There's just something about the mood and the personality of the bass in and around the spawn that they prefer lighter jigs. So if I'm pitching and flipping, even if I'm flipping and pitching bushes like in April and I think the fish are bedding in and around those bushes, I'll sacrifice that efficiency for the slow fall of a light jig because I just get a lot more bites. But anyway, guys, that's just a few foundational tips I can give you on jig sizes, heavy versus light. So what's worked for me over the past 40 years, I think it'll work for you too. And I'm give it a try, see what you guys think. And much appreciated you tuning into the video, guys, and we'll talk later. See you.